Do I think Trump is going to stay in a third term? No, because I think that the armed forces, I think in particular branches of government aren't going to allow that to happen because they'll be listening to the new commander-in-chief who will be the elected president.
His mentality is that he has carte blanche to stay in power, to usurp power, to hold it to himself whenever he wants, and pointing to 2020 doesn't prove your point, it expressly disproves your point.
Trump's second term thus far has been good enough that I would cheer if, we could have Caesar Augustus, Donaldus Trump, but it's not going to happen.
It's not the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning or stops me from sleeping at night. But I do think it's interesting in a moment where people are seeing Trump seize more and more power, and he's seeming more and more like an authoritarian figure.
I'd love, and I do love the fact that it was trending this weekend, that one of the names that was suggested for this is the Charles J. Kirk Ballroom.
There are a lot of things in the world to be outraged about right now. And this wouldn't make my top 20.
First of all, that's a complete lie. There is not a dime of federal funding that goes toward undocumented immigrants, first of all. Second of all, if the Democrats relent on this issue, that means healthcare premiums for those 24 million Americans who rely on ACA coverage are going to double, triple, or quadruple. Do you know why the government is shut down? Do you know why the Democrats
because Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer shut it down because Obamacare doesn't work and they want to give healthcare to illegals.
But if there's one thing American can't get enough of, it's more Kamala Harris. We need more Kamala Harris on TV, more Kamala Harris rallies, more of those incredible concerts, which I attended, many of them.
Where are the Epstein files? Those weren't released.
Brian, what you just said is a total lie. I'll let you get away with some of the other exaggerations, but what you just said about Caroline Leavitt is a total lie. The question was, is Trump looking at restoring or renovating any other aspects of the White House? And her response was, no, the ballroom is his priority.
We need as much Kamala Harris as America. Actually, she should replace Bad Bunny as the Super Bowl halftime performer.
We've finally identified one historic American structure that the left does not want to tear down.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to another Piers Morgan Uncensored, where the debates just go off the rails and people start screaming at each other. Well, that's not really going to happen on this one, but it is what it is, folks. We've got Jack Posobiec coming in. We got Michael Knowles, Tyler Cohen, and Mark Lamont Hill, who is going to make the case for the trans issues. We're going to talk about everything from the trans issues all the way to the destruction of the East Wing on the White House. So you guys prepare for that. Do me that favor, smash that like button for me, subscribe if you're new around here, share this video anywhere and everywhere that you can. And if you would be so inclined, if you're feeling generous today, folks, do me that favor and click that join button. Sign up and become a member. That's the best way to help this channel expand and grow. And make sure and check out my regular videos because, well, I cover news and politics, and we discuss the manipulation that we are being put through, and we are being manipulated heavily by corporate press news articles, folks. Corporate press, they just manipulate everything. They want you to think like they do, and they're trying to force your thoughts into aligning with theirs, force you into their ideology. That's the main goal of what our news apparatus in this country has come to. So y'all make sure and stay tuned to my regular videos, and you guys enjoy the debate.
Michael Knowles, I've been to the White House. It's a lovely building, amazing building, a bit like our number 10 Downing Street or Buckingham Palace. I've never paid much attention to the East Wing, but I have over the years heard grumblings that the White House generally doesn't have enough mass entertainment space, i.e. a big ballroom. So I'm trying to work myself into a lava of rage about this, and I'm coming up slightly short. Why is it winding so many people up that Trump is basically creating a space which was probably lacking?
Well, I'm really glad to see it, actually, Piers, because we've finally identified one historic American structure that the left does not want to tear down. Of course, if it were a statue of George Washington or Abraham Lincoln or Christopher Columbus or an historic church in Washington, D.C., then they would want to rip it to the ground or burn it. But because it is a relatively recent addition to the White House that has been used for various purposes over the years, now they're all up in a rage. But I can promise them, don't worry, that what is going to replace it is going to be bigger. It's going to be much, much more functional than what effectively had become a First Lady's professional quarters since the Carter administration. It's going to be really useful, really beautiful, really patriotic, so I'm sure they'll want to tear it down then.
Tyler Cohen, Do you care? And if so, why?
I care because this puts on full display where Trump's priorities are. If you look at where he actually puts his energy, his focus, his resources, it's on a $350 million ballroom. It's on buying a couple of Gulfstream jets for Kristi Noem to the tune of $172 million. It's on hosting these crypto dinners where Trump has doubled his net worth. It's on gold plating his Oval Office. It's on making sure that he can get himself a Qatari jet that'll be retrofitted to the tune of $1 billion paid for by American taxpayers. This is where his priorities are. And all the while, we've got American farmers who are getting screwed right now. We've got Americans more broadly, 17 million of whom are going to lose access to Medicaid. We've got 24 million Americans who are going to see their ACA premiums double, triple, or quadruple. We've got inflation rising. We've got no manufacturing renaissance that was promised. We've got jobs completely flat. We've got wages flat. And all the while, Trump is only focused on surrounding himself with gold and opulence and wealth. And so it puts on full display what his priorities are in office.
I mean, he has got the hostages released in Gaza. So when you say it's his priority, why can a president of the United States not have multiple things that he's doing at the same time? The ballroom, I'm sure, is not to him a massive priority compared to trying to find peace around the world. But surely he can do two things at once. Can't he?
Caroline Leavitt came out just days ago and said that the ballroom is his priority. And again, the fact is that Donald Trump did not run solely on releasing the hostages. He had plenty of promises that he didn't come. Where are the Epstein files? Those weren't released.
Brian, what you just said is a total lie. I'll let you get away with some of the other exaggerations, but what you just said about Caroline Leavitt is a total lie. The question was, is Trump looking at restoring or renovating any other aspects of the White House? And her response was, no, the ballroom is his priority. Not his priority in the country.
Let me ask you this, Michael.
His priority is reopening the government that the Democrats shut down.
Do you know why the government? Do you know why the government is shut down? Do you know why the Democrats?
Because Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer shut it down because Obamacare doesn't work and they want to give health care to illegals. That's why.
First of all, that's a complete lie. There is not a dime of federal funding that goes toward undocumented immigrants, first of all. Second of all, if the Democrats relent on this issue, that means healthcare premiums for those 24 million Americans who rely on ACA coverage are going to double, triple, or quadruple. So are you in favor of that?
I agree that Obamacare has not worked out very well, and I wish the Democrats had done a better job when they passed it.
So answer the question that I asked,
Trump offered a clean, continuing resolution, and they shut it down. And they shut it down, by the way, this gets back to your earlier point, because the Democrats are on the wrong side of virtually every issue in the country, other than health care, which they're barely holding on to, and environmentalism.
But health care is the issue that the government is shut down over right now.
And they have to shut the government down to change the momentum.
Healthcare is why the government is shut down right now. So I'm going to reiterate the question that I asked you before. Do you think that Democrats should relent on holding this one issue forward, which is that if they don't do anything on ACA subsidies, that healthcare costs are going to double, triple, or quadruple? Do you agree that we should allow those costs to double, triple, or quadruple, and that Democrats should just allow the Republicans to do what they're trying to do, which is eliminate those subsidies?
The ACA is not a Republican law, my friend, and so I'm happy to renegotiate Obamacare.
Michael,
that would be wonderful.
It's a really simple question.
I'm telling you. I'm answering. I think it would be really good to fix Obamacare. We should do that. We shouldn't hold the government hostage.
You've had 9 years. 9 years we have been waiting for some change. We've been promised a new health care plan by Republicans
since you
for 9
guys
years.
passed
We've got concepts of a plan. That's it. We've got concepts of a plan.
Brian, some change from what?
Brian,
from
if I may jump in, Brian. Well, hang on, Brian, if I may jump in, you've just spent the last 5 minutes talking about something other than the ballroom, having initially argued that this was Trump's priority. So I'm a little bit confused. If the ballroom's his priority, why are you moving the narrative so quickly to something else he's been doing?
What's the other thing he's been doing? I've been saying that what the Republicans are trying to do is not add those ACA subsidies, which would keep healthcare costs where they are right now.
No, I get it, but you're talking about a totally different issue. I know, but you're talking about a totally different issue, which is the government shutdown. I made the point that Trump has also managed to get the hostages released in Gaza, that he's also trying to forge a deal to end the war in Ukraine. A president of the United States has a number of important things going on at any given time. The idea that the construction of a ballroom on the east wing of the White House is his top priority, I think is very disingenuous.
I just love how Brian Tyler Cohen actually admits that the one issue that Democrats are just barely holding on to, that's all they've got. That is it, folks. health care. And oh my goodness, they want health care for criminal aliens. He said that's a lie. Well, that right there is a semantic game that he's playing, because we all know, or at least people in the know that, the federal government subsidizes, they got Medicare and the ACA and all this good stuff, right? But the states also have their version of Medicare or whatever. And these Democratic-led states, they want to give health insurance to criminal aliens. Well, they can't really afford to do that. So what do? They take some of that federal money and they put that into their own state system, and then their own state system subsidizes criminal alien health care. We know this, folks. We followed the money. And anybody and everybody can look at this and see that's what's going on. And this is what Democrats keep saying. Oh, not a federal dime goes to this. Right, because it goes to the states, and then it goes from there to the criminal aliens. It's fascinating, y'all. It's a semantic game. It's a lie. It's very, very disingenuous what they do with that. And, Chuck Schumer's keeping the government shut down. I just made an entire video on this, so you guys stay tuned to this channel for more updates on that, where I go over and I break down everything and I explain that the Democrats are intentionally keeping the government shut down. This is why. Well, they just exposed themselves, as a matter of fact, by introducing legislation to fund SNAP. This means, folks, that they don't care about voting to go open the government back up to actually fund SNAP. They want to put this legislation in there as a virtue signal to their base, saying, oh, we're trying to help. We're the white saviors that just came down the escalator from our ivory tower and want to give you benefits. We want to give you handouts. That's what we want to do. But it also signals that they want to keep the government shut down. So all you federal workers out there, we don't care about you. We don't care about you at all. It's fascinating, y'all. But I think that's all I got on this section. Let's keep going.
Trump's second term thus far has been good enough that I would cheer if, we could have Caesar Augustus Donaldus Trump. But it's not going to happen because it's prohibited by the 22nd Amendment. Even the idea of his becoming vice president, it wouldn't work. The 22nd Amendment prohibits that. Now, it's worth pointing out, no less a conservative than Ronald Reagan campaigned at the end of his second term and after he left office before Alzheimer's disease to overturn the 22nd Amendment. So there's a longstanding American tradition that that there is a term limit and it's at the ballot box. And the only one who ever abused that was the Democrat Franklin Roosevelt, who became the American monarch. But all of that is kind of beside the point, because we have a data point here. These Democrats who are wailing about Trump never leaving office because he wants to make some improvements to the White House at private expense, they seem to have forgotten that we already tested this in 2020 after Democrats had changed all the election rules, in some cases unconstitutionally. Even amid all of that, Donald Trump left office. And then people missed him so much that they invited him back. So maybe in the meantime, once he leaves and J.D. Vance is president, maybe we can finally fulfill Reagan's dream, get rid of the 22nd Amendment, and then we can get Trump to a non-consecutive third term.
Brian, I want to play a clip from Steve Bannon.
Wait,
obviously,
can I,
being very
Piers,
close
can I
to
answer
Trump
that
over the
real?
years.
Let
Let me play the clip from Bannon, then you can... hang on a second. I'll play the clip from Bannon. It's on the same theme. Then you can respond. Let's take a look.
You need a third term in order to see that job through?
Well, he's going to get a third term. So Trump 28. Trump is going to be president in 28. And people just ought to get accommodated with that.
So what about the 22nd Amendment?
There's many different alternatives. At the appropriate time, we'll lay out what the plan is. But there's a plan, and President Trump will be the president in 28.
Brian, your response.
So first of all, Michael, if the way that you're going to disprove the notion that Trump is going to try and seek a third term is by pointing to how he reacted in the aftermath of his loss in 2020, I don't think that inspires much confidence. I'm not sure if you remember,
did he leave office or not?
Full-blown, it was a whole-ass insurrection.
The whole January 6th thing, I don't know if you missed it.
Oh, wow. So hold on. There was a big insurrection and a coup d'etat. So, Brian, let me just ask you, did Trump leave office or not?
Yeah, dude, because he wasn't successful at trying to do what he was trying to do. He was indicted for blocking the certification of Congress. Like there is this whole revisionist history where people say, because he wasn't successful at trying the coup that he was trying, that somehow he didn't try it. His mentality is that he has carte blanche to stay in power, to usurp power, to hold it to himself whenever he wants. And pointing to 2020 doesn't prove your point. It expressly disproves your point.
It literally proves the point because he left office, which you just admitted. But now you're saying this
willingly.
But this time he's serious.
I think another way to think about this.
Super duper insurrection, the worst in American history. Okay, I'll wait for that.
So if somebody,
do you want to place a wager? Do you want to place a wager?
If somebody,
no,
if somebody tries,
I think we can have an honest conversation about this. That's a little more nuanced to that. I mean, I think the truth is, I think we can all say Donald Trump indisputably left office. I think we can all say Donald Trump left office kicking and screaming. He did every legislation. He made. No, I'm trying to advance the conversation so we don't just have a dogfight the whole time. I'm saying, yeah, there was a fight. Yes, there was resistance. Some of it was legal. Some of it was extra legal. Some of it was flat out illegal. Some of it was nonviolent. Some of it was violent. Some of it wasn't directly from Trump. Some of it was from his support. We get that. But the point here is that Trump did not want to leave office and did everything he could to not leave office, and still doesn't really believe, or at least doesn't state publicly, that he lost the election. And so based on that logic, it's not unreasonable to think that Donald Trump would resist again. And if he resisted knowing that he doesn't have a second term in his back pocket like he did the first time, it's entirely plausible that he goes even harder this time. It's entirely plausible. All the conspiracy theories are possible. And when people who have supported him for years, if not decades, say, look, he ain't going nowhere, that also doesn't inspire confidence that there's going to be a smooth transition of power.
You don't believe this. Would you place any money on the notion that Trump is going to stay in office for a third term?
Just allow me to finish the thought, and then I promise I won't interrupt you. And so when you see that rhetoric, these actions, Trump's statements, then combined with him doing major reconstruction on a rental, as my man said, that does make some people anxious. Do I think Trump is going to stay in a third term? No, because I think that the armed forces, I think in particular branches of government aren't going to allow that to happen because they'll be listening to the new commander-in-chief who will be the elected president. I actually think Trump won't stay a third time, but I do think it won't be without a fight. I think that's plausible.
You know, I kind of wonder what Mark Lamont Hill is picturing in his head when he says it won't be without a fight, as if Donald Trump and MAGA supporters are going to go up against the U.S. Army for some reason. I don't understand. Like, Donald Trump has said several times at this point that he has no plans to become president in 2028. He's said this so many times. And reporters continue to ask the question. So he says sometimes, I believe he's trolling. Oh, well, you know, we're looking into options or whatever. Like, he'll say something nebulous, so you don't know exactly, and reporters take that as he doesn't confirm or he doesn't deny that he's going to run for a third term, blah, 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 blah. And then the entirety of the Democratic Party, they freak out, manufacture a crisis, and then fearmonger to all of their base over it. Oh, Donald Trump's an authoritarian. Look what he's doing with the ballroom. They are actually pissed off that we're getting renovations to the White House. Right? As if that hasn't happened before. It's so funny to watch these people. They'll sit there and take pictures. As a matter of fact, I saw a news article, CNN, one of the CEO or whatever had to tell reporters to stop reporting on the destruction of the ballroom because they're blowing this story up. They're making it a crisis, right? And that it's so fascinating. They're pretending that, oh, well, we can tell because Donald Trump is renovating this thing right here, the East Wing or whatever, that he's going to stay. You don't do work to a rental. Well, you know what? Yeah, if you're magnanimous, you do, as a matter of fact. If you want to make America great again, which is the entire core of his campaign, you do. You renovate the ballroom, or you create the ballroom, you renovate the White House. Sorry about that. Sometimes I have ways with my words that I cannot even control sometimes. It's the AI chip that I have in the back of my head. But I love this narrative, y'all, because it's so funny to watch people like Steve Bannon get up there and say, oh, yeah, Trump's going to be in there 2028, you betcha. And watch the liberals just melt down over it. It's so funny. And it's so easy to troll liberals, as a matter of fact. Let's keep going.
In terms then of what is next for you, you write very powerfully about the differences that many women have made to your life. When are they going to see a woman in charge in the White House?
In their lifetime, for sure.
Could it be you?
Possibly.
In my experience interviewing politicians, when someone says, I'm not done, it means they are thinking seriously about running. But when you look at the bookies' odds, they put you as an outsider.
I've never listened to polls. If I listened to polls, I would have not run for my first office or my second office, and I certainly wouldn't be sitting here in this interview.
She also told Charlemagne the God, I'm not done. I've lived my entire life of service. It's in my bones. So there have been 2 interviews at the weekend, on the last few days, where she clearly intimated, Jack, that she may have another go at this. I mean, I watched the interview she did in its entirety with Laura Kuenssberg. I thought she just came over as so utterly deluded. Clearly thinks this was a very narrow defeat, that under normal circumstances, if Biden had stood down a bit earlier, she'd have walked it, when in fact the reality is Donald Trump won everything. He won the White House, the Electoral College, the popular vote. He won the whole of Congress. He won every swing state. I mean, it was the biggest shellacking of modern times in terms of the breadth of the victory. Why would she even think of running again?
Oh, no, Piers, I couldn't disagree more. I mean, America's a divided country. This panel's divided in many ways. But if there's one thing America can't get enough of, it's more Kamala Harris. We need more Kamala Harris on TV, more Kamala Harris rallies, more of those incredible concerts, which I attended, many of them, many of the rallies that I went to, just so high energy. We need as much Kamala Harris as America. Actually, she should replace Bad Bunny as the Super Bowl halftime performer. She should just get up there with Megan Thee Stallion, maybe with Bad Bunny, come on out as a guest. I would love her to do every single bit of that.
Well, Brian and Mark have been stony-faced throughout that little statement. So, Brian, let me ask you, this cannot be helpful, surely, to the Democratic Party. I mean, what I'm seeing with the Democratic Party right now, you've got Kamala Harris on this kind of whiny defeat tour, hinting she wants another go at this, which I think would be a disaster. But you also have the progressive, quite hard left of the party beginning to dominate now in Democratic politics. And again, if you're the Republicans, you're probably rubbing your hands with glee that AOC may be the candidate. I mean, what is your view of the way, first of all, what Kamala Harris is doing on maneuvers, but also the way the battle to be the voice and the heart, if you like, and the soul of the Democratic Party is looking like, heading towards another election?
I think in general, if Kamala Harris wants to throw her hat in the ring again, like a full primary is not something that's going to hurt anybody. I think having as many voices as we possibly can is just going to be, I mean, the criticism against Democrats as we headed into the 2024 election was that it was not a democratic process. And so inherently, for anybody to say, oh, Kamala Harris can't run, I think is feeding into that same idea. If she wants to run, if she wants to be part of what I promise will be an extraordinarily large primary field, then more power to her. I think more voices is always welcome. It may be the case that she gets only a few percentage points and it becomes very clear that she's not going to be the nominee. So be it. I think that lending ourselves to that democratic process is only going to help more and more. Now, in terms of the broader Democratic Party right now, look, I think to your point, there is a bit of uncertainty as to who the new face of the Democratic Party is going to be, as to who the leadership of the Democratic Party is going to be. We don't have that answer right now, and I know that's not really like a satisfactory answer, but we just don't have that answer, and in large part, that's why the party had felt rudderless for so long. And so, I think that we're going to get that answer relatively soon, but I think that we can see as we head toward the 2026 midterm cycle that really, in large part, these midterm elections are going to be a referendum on the unpopularity of Republicans. We've seen Democrats overperform 12, 14, 16 points from where they were in 2024. So we'll be able to kind of benefit from that as we head toward midterms, but we're going to need some standard bearer as we head toward 28.
Michael Knowles, it seems to me the problem the Democratic Party has, well, I'll come to you, Mark, in a moment, but Michael, in the New York mayoral race, Mamdani is clearly a very charismatic guy. He's galvanized people in New York. There's no question of that. And there's no doubt that the party nationally is looking at him and thinking, wow, okay, is this the way to go? But my gut feeling is that what the Democratic Party is desperately crying out for is another kind of Bill Clinton figure, Barack Obama figure, left of center, but not too far left, pragmatic, a common sense candidate with bags of charisma, someone who can come and really like drag the party out of the poll gutter it's currently languishing. Least popular Democratic Party ever right now in recorded history in terms of the poll numbers. And I looked at the rally yesterday where you had AOC and Bernie Sanders and Mamdani and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, wow, I just this can't work, can it?
Mamdani is very impressive for New York, and I hope that the Democrats take the lesson that they need to replicate him nationally. I hope they nominate him for president in 2028, because the demographic of New York is not the demographic of the rest of the country. So Mamdani, for instance, relies on the foreign-born New Yorker population. Without the foreign-born population, he loses. It's not even particularly close. So I hope that they try to make all of America look like New York. For the rest of them, I think you're right, Piers. The Democrats are trying to have a Bill Clinton, New Democrat-like figure. That was Gavin Newsom's initial instinct. So he tried to make friends with Charlie Kirk. He tried to make friends with Steve Bannon. And then the base just wouldn't let him. So then he had his press office tweeting out all sorts of unhinged, radically left-wing things, vaguely threatening. They don't know what to do. They're schizophrenic. I don't think that Kamala is serious about running. I think Kamala had some ghost-written book, and she answered the question about how she's not done in politics. I think this is Sarah Palin 2012 all over again. It's going to be will she, won't she, to try to get some speaker fees, but it's not really going to work. And then who are you left with? I think AOC is legitimately a pretty impressive candidate, probably can't win nationally, but she is where the Democrat Party is going. Otherwise, who you got? Mamdani? Okay, nominate him. I'm in. Where do I donate?
Yeah, I mean, Mark Lamont Hill, I think this is a real crisis of identity for the Democratic Party. And it looks to me like they haven't really learned much from the last election, which is that if you get hijacked by the progressive left of the party with all the woke stuff that was enveloping the party, that you can run into a populist Republican candidate who just takes you to the woodshed, right? And I just feel like they haven't learned from this. That surely the party has to move back to a more electable center ground, doesn't it?
It's so fascinating. I was with you right until about 70% of that sentence. It was going to be one of those monumental achievements in human history that you and I agreed. I think you're right that the Democratic Party has not learned its lesson. I think the Democratic Party over and over again continues to fail to lose its lesson because it doesn't seem to be able to find its backbone. And it doesn't seem to want to engage or respond to the policies and the outcomes that voters want. I mean, the reason Mamdani is popular is because he's speaking to people's needs. I mean, people want lower taxes. People want public transportation that's free. People want access to housing and healthcare. People want to be safe on the streets. And we can have disagreements about certain pieces of Mamdani's politics. That's fine. Everyone can have those agreements or disagreements. I tend to agree with him. But ultimately, he's speaking to the voters' needs. What the Democrats keep doing, particularly on national elections, is say, hey, we're going to try to out-Republican the Republicans. Kamala Harris went on the national stage, and she's bringing on Republicans with her. She's not moving beyond Biden or Trump's position on Israel-Palestine, which became a huge wedge issue for her when she was running. When we talk about immigration, when we talk about offshore drilling, I could name 5 issues, fracking, more specifically. We could name multiple things that she just wasn't sufficiently distinguishable from the Republican alternative. And that's what didn't make voters excited to come out and vote for her, along with all the other stuff. I absolutely think that they need to learn their lesson. The Republicans learned the lesson over a decade ago. Remember when the Republicans kept getting shellacked and Bobby Jindal did the autopsy of the Republican Party? And the thing the Republicans start to learn is they need to speak to their voters. They need to speak to the base of their voters. They need to stop backing down. That's what I'd like to see from Democrats. And as far as the Kamala Harris choice, I disagree wholeheartedly. I know some people pretty close to her. I haven't spoken to her directly, but I think she's absolutely considering running. And my fear is not that she'll get nominated. I actually don't think she'll win the nomination. But my fear is that the person who does won't be that different. If Gavin Newsom runs, he's more popular. He's more charming to some people. He's more handsome to some people, but he's the same candidate in different wrapping. We need a progressive, a real progressive.
No, what the Democratic Party needs is candidates, a lot of candidates, and a leader that actually has a plan for the country, can speak to what people feel, can speak to their needs, their wants, whatever that may be, can speak to the American ethos, can speak all of these things, but not just speak these things, because that's exactly what Mondami is doing. He's speaking to the needs. He's speaking to the ethos of the liberals and all of these other things. But the thing is, to get Republicans and independents and people that actually have a brain, you must explain how you're going to get to where you're going to get. You can't just give empty platitudes and be like, there you go, that's how I win a campaign, which is exactly what Mondami is doing. That's exactly what Kamala Harris did. She never could explain anything. It took her forever to get anything onto her website. And then when you did have something on her website, it didn't explain how you're going to get there. And, Brian Tyler Cohen, I believe, said something about Mondami's, everybody wants lower taxes. What? He's talking about raising taxes. This is not a good thing. That never sounds good, especially when you're targeting a specific group like millionaires, right? I don't understand this idea that the liberals have. It's in their ethos or whatever, their ideology, that, we're going to tax the rich. They need to be taxed more. Yeah, you're going to make them flee the country, for crying out loud. You can't have unfair tax burdens on people, which we kind of already do, but it's sufficient enough to make these people want to stay in the country because their sense of pride outweighs their sense of keeping their own money, right? That's a Republican thing, right? Taxes are theft, essentially. That's kind of a libertarian thing as well, but it's a Republican thing also. Like, I don't mind paying a certain amount of taxes because I understand that roads have to be built, hospitals, infrastructure, red lights, stop signs, all of this stuff has to be paid for. We have federal workers, our military, that needs to be paid for. Now, like what's going on with SNAP right now, it threatens to get cut off, and then all of a sudden you have this flood of people crying and screaming, talking about going and committing felonies, stealing food because they're not getting an entitlement. That turns people off. You have to have some sort of a plan, but you have to explain how you're going to get there, right? Mondami doesn't really explain how he's going to create free buses because he says, we're just going to tax the rich. It's just a small increase. But that doesn't explain how you're going to pay for free buses. It really doesn't, because that small little increase in taxes isn't going to pay for free buses, isn't going to pay for, government grocery stores. You're going to create bread lines. People see parallels with communism, and then they look through the history books and see that, hang on, communism has failed over and over and over and over again. And the arrogance of some of these candidates that say, well, they didn't do it right, and we're going to. That right there spells doom to a lot of people, and you're going to lose, right? Democrats need to learn their lessons from Donald Trump, as a matter of fact, because Donald Trump has shown the people that Democrats and their empty platitudes is not policy. That is not running the government, right? You can't run the government with platitudes. You can't run the government with empty promises. You actually have to be able to govern. And having open borders and free health care for everybody doesn't make sense to most people, because we understand that we already pay a sufficient amount of our paycheck into Medicare and Medicaid, and it's failing. It's absolutely failing right now. It's no bueno, right? They're already talking about, the health care premiums are going to skyrocket because we're ending emergency subsidies. Like, how does that make any sense? It doesn't. It sounds like fear-mongering, if you ask me. Because were these really high insurance premiums around before these emergency subsidies went into place? If the answer is no, then you have to explain why the insurance premiums are going to go up. You must explain that. You can't just tell people, right? Some people fall for it. Some people just appeal to that authority, and they're like, health insurance premiums are going to go up, and they'll go tell all their friends this without actually looking into it. But when you look into it, you find there's no basis for that statement at all. There is no basis. So to me, it sounds like fear-mongering. I need somebody to explain why removing COVID-era emergency subsidies for healthcare is going to make these insurance premiums go up. I think it's just Democrats want to pay for health care for criminal aliens. We know they already want to do that. I explained that in my last video, like I said earlier. We know that's what's going on here. They intentionally shut the government down, right? Because Republicans are in compromise mode. If you think that they're just this monolithic, uncompromising body of people that are just like no to everything, I'm sorry, that's not the truth. the truth is, the current CR that they're trying to fund the government with is Biden-level spending. Republicans haven't reduced spending at all, which is very irresponsible if you ask me, because once again, folks, I talk about this all the time. Biden levels of spending, his last fiscal year that he was in control completely, $1.8 trillion of deficit spending, folks. $1.8 trillion. That's it's an absurd amount of spending into the red, right? It's into the wrong place. We don't need to be there. We can't spend that much money. It's adding to the national debt unnecessarily. We need to cut back on the budget. We need to make that deficit come way down so we can actually pay the interest payments and then pay something to the principal of our national debt and try to knock that down a little bit. Because right now, currently, the Congress, and has been for 25 years at this point, has been selling out the future of this nation for the here and now to fund the government in a deficit because they didn't want to do the work to write up all the appropriations fiscally responsibly. They want to pay for this and pay for that and pay for this and pay for everything. And then Democrats want to increase that spending. And Republicans are like, we can't do that. And then they want to try to blame the government shutdown on the Republicans, who have for 13 times voted to fund the government in a deficit. Yes. And it's insane that Democrats are like, no, we got to have these emergency subsidies. We want to spend more money. It's absurd, y'all. It really is. But I think I've rambled on for long enough. Let's go to the next section.
If I can add too, Piers, Brian, you had mentioned the progressive left and all the woke stuff. Think about who the candidates are that have been relentlessly focused, to Mark's point, on issues that impact regular voters. Bernie Sanders, the farthest left politician that we have in America, also the most popular politician that we have in America, also the one who is so focused not on woke issues, but on issues that impact regular Americans, on economic issues. AOC is the same way. Mamdani ran this whole campaign focused on the rent and focused on free buses and making sure that people can afford to eat. So there's this weird conflation where just because someone is progressive, that you just assume that they're these just bastions of wokeness. But in fact, the most progressive candidates, the people who identify as democratic socialists, those are the ones who are focused on issues that actually impact real Americans, largely economic issues. And in fact, it is
but if
the
you,
Republican
but I would say,
it's the Republicans in office who are more focused on identity politics.
Yeah, but Brian, but if you asked AOC, for example, what is a woman, we all know she'd struggle to answer. Right, this is the problem, right? She would be very, very wary of articulating that a woman is an adult female, right? Because I think
AOC would have no problem. I think people love creating.
She would struggle.
Correct.
Okay, how about Mamdani then? Mamdani tweeted out
the only struggle would be arriving at a common point of definition between her and transphobic people who refuse to accept trans people as people and trans women as women and trans men as men.
Yeah, but this is where, hang on, Mark, this is where you're so wrong, and I'll explain why. You know, Kamala Harris, if you remember in the last election, in the run-up to the election day, the most successful ad in modern American political history, the New York Times said afterwards, was the 30-second ad about Kamala Harris and the trans issues, ending with Kamala's for they, them, Donald Trump is for you. They reckon it moved the needle by 3 points. And yet at the same time, many on the Democratic side were saying, this woke stuff, nobody cares, it's irrelevant, it doesn't cut through, it's all just right-wing hysteria. And I was sitting there in the middle going, no, it does cut through. It does cut through. If you're like a mum with kids in sport, in women's sport, in middle America, you absolutely care about this. And you want to have a candidate that can quite clearly tell you what a woman is. Now, I come back to this because to me it became a litmus test of where the left took things. If you can't articulate what a woman is without, as you say, I'm not, look at me, I'm not remotely transphobic. I think trans people exist. They have a right to exist. They have a right to fairness, equality, safety, like you and me. I want the same rights for them that everybody else gets. However, not at the expense of eroding women's rights. And that's why the definition of a woman is so crucially important, because it stops the unfairness and inequality and safety issues that come from when you allow trans women to say we're women and they start trampling on women's rights. That's why it's so important.
Okay. I heard your statement. You articulated quite masterfully. I'm going to ask you if you allow me to respond without interruption. I'll take 20 seconds. There's a difference between saying we disagree on what defines a woman and saying that people who have a more expansive definition are struggling to define what a woman is. We're not struggling to define it. You just don't agree with us. Trans women are women. Cis women are women. They're all women. There are different experiences. There are different stories. There are different contexts. And we have to be, I think, honest about that in applying public policy. But there's no struggle here. If there's any struggle, it's been getting voters to remain focused on the issues that actually matter. I didn't have an issue that Kamala Harris prioritized or paid great attention to trans women's rights. The problem was she allowed the right wing to co-opt the narrative and make it seem like that's all she cared about, that she didn't care about workers' rights, that she didn't care about reparations, that she didn't care about living wages, that she didn't care about Palestinians in Gaza, that she didn't care about Haiti, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So no, that's not an issue. And finally, to take this one issue around women's sports, and which is relatively small in terms of its impact on everyday people, and make it seem as if trans people who make up an infinitesimal part of the American public are somehow running through your cities and just doing triple axels and dunks and swimming past all your little girls and ruining their sports dreams is a dishonest narrative. I probably agree with you to a large degree about needing to have a conversation about trans women in sports. I'm open to having that conversation. What I'm not open to doing is making it seem as if trans people are destroying the world, or they're destroying women's rights, or they're undermining women's rights. There's a lot of people undermining women's rights right now, and it ain't trans people. And allowing the right to convince us that that was the big issue in the election is why the Democrats lost. And I don't blame the Republicans for that. I blame the Democrats for not foregrounding the issues that mattered in addition to this other issue that also matters.
But Mark, I think you just made Piers's point.
Can a woman have
because...
hang on, Michael, I will come to you. But just quickly, can a woman have a penis, Mark? Yes or no?
These types, a trans woman may have a penis. A cis woman would not have a penis. These are silly gotcha games that are just used to get clips on the internet. I understand your point.
No, they're not.
You're saying
they're just simple biology. No, it's simple biology. A woman can't have a penis. Full stop.
You and I agree on the biology. The point here is that gender identities are different than sex identities. In other words, gender identity is not a biological construct. So yes, women birth babies. Men have penises. We all agree on that if we're talking about male and female, actually. Males have penises, women have vaginas. We agree with that. We can all agree on that. When we talk about gender, it's not purely about what you're assigned biologically at birth. And so to conflate the two things is to either be ignorant to the actual issue or to be disingenuous. I don't think that you are ignorant.
So does anyone who has
a
vagina, is that a man?
Say that one more. Say that again. I didn't hear the question.
Oh, so just following that on is the inverse also true then? So does anyone who has a vagina must be a man then, right?
No, that's not the inverse. That's not at all the inverse. The point here is that biologically, there's male and female. That's a much better question. That would follow more logically than the thing you initially asked. Biologically, if you have a vagina, if you're born with a vagina, you are a female. Biologically, if you're born with a penis, you are a male. Yes, that's not in dispute. What's in dispute is, are our biological, our identities at birth, are our biological identities the whole story? And in a trans conversation, we're saying, no, that's not the whole story. Yes, I was assigned male at birth. Everybody on this panel, ironically, was assigned male at birth. That's not in dispute. What's in dispute is, does that tell the whole story about our identity?
I wasn't assigned male at birth.
Yes, nobody is assigned anything at birth. Your DNA, your own biological makeup made you what you are. If you want to identify as the opposite sex, go right ahead. Don't try to force that onto other people. But, we're not going to go along with you pretending to be something else, something that you're not, right? We're going to see things for what they are. Just because you feel a certain way doesn't mean that we must affirm the way that you feel. We don't have to do that. And that's the hang up. People are trying to force this. They're trying to normalize delusions, and people just don't want to go along with it. These people need to get it through their mind. This is part of the problem for the Democratic Party. They've latched onto this because they see it as a civil rights issue that they can just latch onto, and they think that they're fighting for other people. They're fighting for the downtrodden and the minority over here, and they want to signal their virtue to the entire world. That turns people off. It makes people sick to their freaking stomach. One, because it's delusional and it's devoid of reality completely, and we're not going to go along with that. Society has said no, and that's it, right? Just because you want to pretend to be something that you're not, right? Do it. We're not saying you can't do that. Now, when you start arguing about trans rights and all this other nonsense, what is trans rights, as a matter of fact? Because why do these people that believe in a delusion, why do they get more rights than everybody else? Because as a human being, as an American citizen, we all have the same amount of rights regardless. That can't be argued at this point. We've come really far in this country, which people are trying to forget. Oh, revisionist historians like Mark Lamont Hill, as a matter of fact, trying to say this country was built on the back of slaves. Sure, they assisted, but it wasn't completely built on the back of slaves. Right? Sure, that was a main focus of the economy back then. Yes, for the South at least, where slavery was a thing. But to say the entire country was built on the back of slaves, I'm sorry, no, that's not how reality works. That's revisionist history. Right, but this whole trans issue is nonsensical. And this is one reason why Democrats, they could be really good on policy. And if you try to take society down a road that society refuses to go, people will vote against you every single time because they see a future that they don't want to come to fruition. And they were like, no, we'll go with the Republicans on this one because at least the Republicans can see reality for what it is. They can see that this is all nonsensical. We're not going to go down this path. These people need to stop. These trans people are not missing any rights. We all get the same amount of rights. Right? Trans rights don't exist because they're just human rights. Now, I've heard that talking point, that line parroted by trans activists. And now I'm flipping it back on them because it's the truth. You don't get more rights than everybody else. I'm sorry. If you're a biological man, you go into the biological men's bathroom. If you're a biological man, you cannot play in biological female sports. You want to go down that path? You say, oh, trans women are women? Well, no, that's not true. Trans men are not women. Trans anything is not anything except for what they were born as. Your own DNA is telling you one thing, and your brain is trying to tell you something else. Or maybe I should take that back. Your DNA is trying to tell you one thing, or has told you, has actually put their foot down and said, this is what you are. And society is trying to influence you and affirm something that is not true. That is what is going on in this country, and these people need to stop with this, all right? We've been fighting this fight, and we are pushing back as hard as we can to tell these people, no, look, you want to exist as a trans person? Go right ahead, but you cannot step outside of your biological bounds. That's what they're doing. They're trying to say, oh, well, gender is something totally different than sex, but it's not because you're pretending to be the opposite sex. Once again, you want to play in biological women's sports. A biological man wants to play in biological women's sports because their social construct tells them that they are a female. Which, what does gender even mean if it doesn't conform to your biological sex? It doesn't mean a damn thing. So it's all nonsense is what it is, folks. Nonsense. But I think I've made my point quite clear on this. I want you guys to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comments section because I imagine you got your opinions and stuff, because everybody has opinions. It's like buildings with doors. They all have them. Everybody has an opinion. I could use the old adage of they're like buttholes. Everybody's got one, right? But it's not really true, because everybody, I mean, it's true, everybody does have one butthole, but I think just about everybody has more than one opinion. I mean, that's just about a guarantee in this day and age. Am I correct or am I wrong? Y'all let me know down in the comments section, and I'll go rambling again. Y'all smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here, and you want to stay up to date with news and politics, and you want to be on the kind of the up and up with how you're being manipulated by corporate press and mainstream news. Yeah, this is the best place for that, by the way, because we analyze and break down the manipulations. We don't just say, I don't just tell you you're being manipulated. I actually show you how you're being manipulated. So y'all check out my regular videos. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. That would be lovely. And if you would be so inclined, if you're convinced by what I'm saying here, do me a favor and click that join button. Sign up and become a member. That would help me out like you wouldn't believe. Seriously, y'all. I have fought the fight, and I'm staying in this fight to push back against the nonsense, and I need y'all's help. All right, the corporate press, they operate on this gigantic multi-million-dollar budget, and you got little old me over here going to work every day, working 8 hours a day, coming home, doing a little bit of research, going over some news, and then recording this and editing these videos and uploading these videos until it's time for me to go to bed. That's literally my entire day. Work for 8 hours and then work for another 8 or 9 hours. Then I go to bed. That's it. That's all I do, folks. Just grind, 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 grind. And I could use y'all's help, seriously, to push back and spread the message about the truth, about what's going on in this country to as many people as possible. So y'all do all that for me. And you guys remember that God has a plan for you, specifically you. And everybody else, to be honest with you, but for you. Jesus died on the cross to save our lives so that we could have everlasting life eternally in heaven with him. We must be grateful for that, y'all. So y'all make sure and have a good day. Stay legitical.